Before we start, just a shout out to one of our sponsors. Without our sponsors, they help run Forward Classic. We would not have an event without them. So for this one of our bronze sponsors, ReverseSec. So thank you, ReverseSec. And without further ado, let me introduce Tomar.
Hey, everyone. Thank you. So today we're going to talk about hijacking identities through Entra Connect synchronization. So we're going to talk about two vulnerabilities. One is called SoftMatching Abuse. The other one is called SyncJacking. Let's get to the chase. So who am I? My name is Tomar. I'm a security research team lead at Paris. I love AD, Entra, anything related to identity in general. This is what I do most of my days. So a little bit of a background story. Back in 2022, I published an Entra Connect vulnerability. It went mostly unnoticed. Not many people recognize it. I can almost guarantee that none of you have heard of it. But in 2025, it was confirmed as a vulnerability after investigation by MSRC as a privilege escalation vulnerability. Today, we're going to cover it. So everything is related to Entra Connect. What is Entra Connect? We have to ask ourselves, right? So Entra Connect is an application that is used to sync users between AD and Entra ID. That means that we have users in AD that we want to move or copy or update in Entra ID. We'll use the Entra Connect application. So you can run it on its own dedicated server, but I'll be honest, in my test labs, I'm just doing it on my DC because it's just easier. And how does it look? We have a user in AD, for example, my user, and Entra Connect copies all of the relevant attributes and creates or updates my user in Entra ID. But the most important mechanism for this talk is the password hash synchronization mechanism in Entra Connect. And based on its name, you can already guess that what it's doing, it's taking the password from my AD user and updates the password in my Entra ID account. But how do we even know that we're syncing to the same user? Because I have Tomar in AD, and I have Tomar in Entra ID. So are we matching them just based on display name, any other attributes? Well, obviously, Microsoft thought about it, and they came out with something called Entra Connect matching, which is the process of linking an on-premise user with an existing cloud-managed user in Entra ID. And for that, we have two mechanisms. We have the soft matching and hard matching. And today we're going to talk about one vulnerability in soft matching and another one in hard matching. So let's start with the first one, which is soft matching. And let's talk about what is soft matching, what does it do? So soft matching is, we are matching based on two attributes that exist both in AD and in Entra ID, which is the user principal name and proxy address. And the matching is pretty simple. So if we have an AD user with the user principal name, we need to match it with the users in Entra ID user principal name, and the AD user's primary proxy address needs to match the one in Entra ID as well. And if we look at Perry Fernandez, which is a very popular account in Identity Talks, we can see that the user principal name just exists over there, and we have the proxy address, and we need to copy them and match them with the on-prem account. So we also have two types of users in Entra ID. When it comes to synchronization, we have a synced user, and we have an unsynced user. So a synced user, as you can imagine, it just means that it was synced between AD and Entra ID. There's a matching between an account in AD and also in Entra. An unsynced user, it's just a cloud-managed user in Entra ID that doesn't have any traces or anything in the on-prem environment. So for the soft matching attack, we're going to talk first about the unsynced user. We're going to attack this one. So let's just abuse soft matching. The soft matching vulnerability research was done together with Sapir Fedorovsky. I have to give her a shout out. She's an amazing researcher. You can follow her on X. She posts very good blogs, Sapir X Fed. It's just a shout out. So what's the attack? So I have to give credit to Dirk Jan, who is the first person who found this attack. He found that an unsynced user in AD can be synced to an unsynced user in Entra ID with an active privileged role. That means if we have a user in Entra ID with a privileged role that was never synced, we can match it with an unsynced user in AD, and then we can take over the user with the active privileged role. So he published it in his research, Syncing Yourself to Global Administrator in Azure Active Directory. Amazing research. And it was fixed, okay? So the syncing of an unsynced user, I'm just going to reiterate it. With an active privileged role to Entra ID, it was fixed. So can we still exploit it in some other way? So there's this thing called active roles and eligible roles in Entra ID. Active roles are assigned now, and the permissions are immediately available. And eligible roles are assignable on demand, and it requires user activation. It can be several types of activation. It depends on how you configure it in PIM per this role. So it can be MFA, it can be just a justification, it can be many other things. But they require, in order to actually get and acquire this privilege, you need to activate it from the UI of code. And they can be assigned to limited time or permanently, but this is also correct for the active roles. So what we found that you can still use soft matching to sync to a privileged role in Entra ID if it's not actively assigned, but eligibly assigned. So the following permissions are required to perform this attack, which one either or the create user object permission, that once you create a user, you're just the owner of it, so you can just change whatever you want. User delegation on a syncable OU, because when you configure Entra Connect, you can choose which OUs you want to sync. Sometimes it's just the entire domain, but some people just do it more specific, and they just select the OUs they want to sync, or just account operators membership, then it doesn't matter in which OU, you can just do whatever you want. So let's just finally abuse soft matching. What we'll do is we'll create a user in AD named Louis. We also have a user in Entra ID named Johnny Sherman, which is a eligibly privileged, unsynced Entra ID user. I'm going to use the word sync a lot, just so you know. We're going to copy the username, user principal name, and proxy address to Louis' AD user. And once it happens, we'll wait for it to sync, and then the password will also be synced. So let's see it just from the UI. We have Johnny Sherman, which was never synced. He's an unsynced user. He has the eligible global administrator role to it. He has the user principal name and proxy address that we're going to copy from his Entra ID user, and we're going to copy it to Louis' AD on-prem account attributes. So that means the proxy address and the user principal name is going to be copied from Johnny Sherman's Entra ID user. And then we'll just wait for it to sync. And we can see that Louis, well, it used to be Johnny Sherman, is synced. So we can already see that the display name was changed, but we now have the global administrator eligible role. And because Louis' AD password was password hash synced to Johnny Sherman, we can sign in as this user. So what can we see from the logs in Entra ID? We can see that the display name was changed, like we just saw before, and we can see that the password was changed. But these are the only two logs that we have for this attack. So what you can do is, first of all, disable soft matching, don't use it at all, and you can require MFA for role activation on eligible roles, and also require MFA on signing to the account in general. So the other attack is going to take advantage of hard matching. It's called SyncJacking, and let's just start. So as opposed to soft matching, hard matching has something called the source anchor, which is an attribute that is never changed, and when you choose the wrong source anchor, it can break synchronization. So it's a different attribute than the proxy address and user principal name. It's called MSDS consistency GUID. And if you let Entra Connect manage which attribute you use as a source anchor. So until a certain version, it just used the object GUID. But in later versions, in all newer versions, of course, we're using the MSDS consistency GUID attribute to match the user. So if the MSDS consistency GUID is unpopulated, it means that we never synced a user before using the hard matching technique. It writes the object GUID of this user to this attribute. And there's got to be something that is saved in Entra ID, which is called the immutable ID. And we'll see it in a second. So how does it do the conversion? Pretty simple. We have the object GUID, we turn it into a byte array, and then we just convert it to a base 64 string. And as you can see from the example output, this is how it looks, the object GUID. It will look in AD, in the MSDS consistency GUID attribute, and immutable ID, which will be saved in the Entra ID count. So, for example, we have Bobby. You can see that the on-premise immutable ID is saved in this account. It looks like that. So what's the vulnerability in SyncJacking? So it turns out you can sync yourself to an already synced user in Entra ID with either role. It can be an active role, eligible role, and it doesn't matter if it's a privileged role, unprivileged role, whatever you want, you can do with SyncJacking. For that, you need to have these permissions. You need write all properties or generic write on an unsynced on-prem account, and you have to have delete on the synchronized object you wanna take over. But more useful informations for this attack is the user delegation, again, on a syncable OU, and the account operator's membership. So let's perform SyncJacking. So we have the user Bobby, which is an actively assigned global admin Entra ID user. And of course, he's synced. And we're going to copy the user principal name of this user to Robert's AD user attribute. We're also going to copy Bobby's AD MSDS consistency GUID, but you can take it, of course, and just convert it from the immutable ID in Entra ID, and copy it to Robert's AD user's attributes. And then we just have to delete Bobby, the synced user from AD, the account that we are going to take over on. And let's just see it from the UI. We can see Bobby, he's already synced. He has the active global administrator role to it. We're going to copy the user principal name of Bobby to Robert. We're also going to copy Bobby's MSDS consistency GUID to Robert's MSDS consistency GUID, and we're going to delete Bobby from AD. And now we can see that, again, the password was synced from Robert to Louis, and we have the active global administrator role. So for the logs, we have, again, a display name changed from Bobby to Robert, and we have a change user password. That happens all the time, of course. If you have a synced user and you update the AD password, you will get these logs. So you're going to see a lot of them anyway. And what you can do, there's not much you can do. You cannot disable hard matching now because you already disabled soft matching. So what you can do is just require MFA on the account if you need to log into it. It's still good, yeah. It's the recommendation by Microsoft as well. And for the disclosure of the entire thing, how it happened, in 2022, I discovered it and reported it to MSRC. They gave me some hardening guidelines, and it still worked. Then reopened the case and updated the documentation to have some more hardening guidelines for hard matching takeover, but it still worked. And then they just said it's by design. But in 2025, the case was in review again, and it was confirmed as an important privilege escalation vulnerability. And MSRC is now working on this case to fix it. So I just want to thank MSRC for reopening this case and actually developing effects for it. And they also told me it's okay to give this talk about this issue, even though they are just now fixing it. And for the references, if you want to take a look, there's the SyncJacking blog. There's the blog from Dirk Jan, which is an amazing blog about the soft matching original abuse. And we also have the SMTP matching abuse that I wrote together with Sapir. And that's it. Thank you. I'll leave it like that. Questions?
So from one from me to kick things off. So this seems like a very good area of research and one where there could be a lot of other areas, kind of adjacent, kind of like how you started off, looking at Dirk-Jan's research and kind of extending it. What areas do you think could come next in this, do you think?
In Entra Connect, Sync?
Yeah. So you've looked into these areas with, looking at eligible role assignments, for example, or, the SyncJacking and stuff like that. What kind of other areas do you think there are to explore here?
I'll be honest, I didn't check it on groups just yet. So if you want to give it a shot, feel free to do it.
Fair enough.
Hello, thank you for the talk. In terms of mitigations, is there a way to express like this instance of AD Connect can only synchronize with that set of users to try to exclude a set of global admins or whatever from the synchronization?
I don't think you can do it on roles, but you can set on which OUs you want to sync. So just as a basic recommendation, you shouldn't sync a privileged role from Entra ID ever to an on-prem account. If a user is privileged in Entra ID, it shouldn't be synced ever. So if you can just look at these two users and see which ones are synced, break synchronization or just remove this.
Thank you for the great talk. Do you know what caused Microsoft to reopen the case? Did you ask them about it?
Yeah, I actually emailed them again about it with some new information I didn't give in this talk because I just wanted to give it until they fix it. But yeah, I just sent them another case and then they just confirmed it this time. So if you have one, you should try.
Awesome. Any other questions?
So the issue is only when we have a password synchronization, right? If we have a federation, there is not issue here, right?
This is, I didn't check, but okay. I'm gonna guess that it's true for this attack at least.
Okay, and second question, Microsoft's starting to do more about Entra Connect, and I think they even announced that there will be a new solution. How do you think about that? Do you already found something?
I didn't, but I need to. Okay, yeah, now you can't even download it from just Microsoft website. You have to go into Entra ID and into a certain blade over there. So yeah, they changed it.
So is it possible to exploit this? Let's say I have a malicious app registration with the user.read write permissions and stuff, or do you actually have to be a admin account to do this? Or can I just, if I have access to Graph API keys or something, can I use that to exploit this?
You mean a service principal with permissions to create users?
Yeah.
So I never looked at it just from the Entra ID side. I also looked from the AD side. So I'm not sure if you create a user in... you have to have the attributes in AD populated for it to match. So you need to populate some attributes in AD for that.
I'm not really familiar with Entra ID, but is there any way to use this as a vector for lateral movement between forests?
So, interesting. It might be, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good question though.
Awesome. I think that's it for questions. So once again, thank you, Tomar.
Thank you. Thank you.